back to Midland Public Library's Easy Embroidery Program. As always, I'm Jen, and I'm the Maker Place Coordinator here at MPI. This week, we're going to be learning to embroider flowers. Woo! I'm so excited for this week, so let's jump right in. First up, let's learn the Lazy Daisy. Okay, so last week, I showed you how to do the detached chain stitch, and so I did it in a group of 4 here, and over here you can see I did it as a single leaf on a stem there. So the difference between what I was doing there and the Lazy Daisy stitch is there isn't really a difference. The Lazy Daisy stitch is just traditionally done in a group of 5 petals, so it's this exact same stitch, but you do it in a group of 5 or more, and it turns out looking like a flower. A couple of things I've learned about this stitch from doing some practice Lazy Daisies. First, I like the way it looks better when I don't split my floss, when I don't divide my floss into 3, and I keep all 6 strands of the floss. I think they pop a little bit better and just look a little more neat and uniform on the fabric. So consider keeping your floss as all 6 strands. Secondly, because you are going to be coming up and down in the center of your flower quite a bit, it's very easy to catch your needle when you're going back down on some of the floss that's underneath there. So one of the things I did to combat that was I trimmed the extra floss after my knot, just to get rid of that extra dangly piece so that my needle end wasn't catching on it. And third, the last thing is I found it was really helpful for keeping my petals uniform to actually draw the Lazy Daisy first instead of just freehanding it. So keep all of that in mind when you're working on your Lazy Daisy, and let's get started. So I'm going to start here just by drawing out a 5-petal flower. Okay. Now that I've done that, I'm going to come up right in the center of my flower. And then I'll go back down right in the same spot I come up, or very close to it. And just like with the detached chain stitch, I'm gonna leave a loop. And I will come up on the tip of one of my flower petals. So I'll bring my needle up onto the tip of one of my flower petals, and I'll come through the loop. Then I'm just gonna pull that petal, that loop, tight but not too tight, because I want it to maintain its petal-like shape. So then to secure that loop in place, to finish off that petal, I'm going to come back down on the outside of the loop, like so, and just secure it in place. And I'm going to continue doing that all the way around the outside of my Lazy Daisy until I've finished it. So I'll do all 5 petals. So let's do number 2. I came up and then went back down in the center there, kept my loop. I'm going to come up on the tip of my petal, come through the loop, and then I'll pull it taut. Then I'm going to come back down on the outside and secure that loop in place. All right, so there you have another Lazy Daisy. So I think my biggest tip with this one is really don't be afraid to take your time to get your needle placement right and to get your loop placement right. I think that was my best Lazy Daisy yet. Up next, we're checking out the French knot and French knot flowers. All right, the French knot. So this one's pretty simple. I'm gonna do my best to show you how to do it because it's quite small. So this is what a French knot ends up looking like. So it looks like just a little dot or a little knot on your fabric. So to do a French knot, you're gonna come up and pull your floss taut, and then you're gonna point your needle and you're going to actually wrap the floss around the needle 2 times. 1, 2. And then it's important to continue holding this tight. So you can see if I let go, it loosens on my needle. I need to hold that tight and in place. And then you're gonna go back down through the same hole or really close to it that you came out of. And this whole time you're gonna keep it tight. You'll push your needle down through until you can grab it to pull it. Okay, and then you're just gonna pull it until the knot tightens. So let me show you that one more time. I'm gonna go up through, pull my floss through. I'll grab the floss and wrap it twice around my needle. I'll keep it tight. Put my needle back through that same hole or really close. And I'm just gonna push my needle through, still pulling that tight. And I'll pull my needle through the knot and pull it until it is tight. So that is the French knot. So I'm just gonna change my floss over and then we will do a French knot flower. Okay, now that my floss is all changed over, let's do a French knot flower. So to do a French knot flower, you're basically just going to do a bunch of French knots in a group. So I'm gonna do some kind of little, I don't even know what kind of shape you would call this, but I'm gonna do a bunch of French knots in this shape. And then when I'm done, you could do some kind of stem that would look like this with one of the stitches that we learned. So I'm gonna fill this guy in with a bunch of French knots. Let's get going. One of the fun things I've seen done with this is people will start with a light pink color at the top. So they'll do completely light pink French knots, and then they'll move to a medium shade of pink before moving on to a darker pink color. And so it'll be like an ombre French knot flower. So that's definitely something you can try if you have multiple colors of floss. Okay, so it's not perfect, but it's cute, I think. So then I'm just gonna add a quick little stem to give you the idea of what it'll look like. So voila, there is a French knot flower. Next, let's try the woven wheel, also called a woven rose. Okay, for the woven wheel, you're gonna start out with a lot more thread than you would normally use because this stitch uses a lot. I would say start out with about double and you'll probably still have to replace your floss. Then what you're gonna do is you're going to draw kind of like a little star that has 5 points. And so I'm gonna make this one like not huge because if I do it too big, it's gonna take a really long time to do. Okay. Trying to make it even here. Perfect. Okay. So this is what it should look like. You'll notice on the patterns that I did for the final project, there's also a circle around it like that. That's just what the woven wheel pattern looks like when you draw it out. So you can have the circle or not, totally up to you. So, you can also do woven wheel with a different number of points or lines, as long as it's an odd number. So I'm doing it with 5, you could do it with 7, 9, etc. So what you're gonna start by doing is coming up in the center. You're gonna pull your floss through, and then you're gonna go to the end of one of your lines, to the point, and go back down. And pull through. And you're gonna do that on each of the 5 lines. So come up in the center. And go on down over here. Okay, so then once you have your 5 points, you're gonna come up pretty much in the center, so as close to the center as you can, but not quite. You wanna be a little on the outside there. Okay, and so this is called the woven wheel or the woven rose because we're basically gonna weave all the way around the outside. So we're gonna go over top of this stitch and under this one, over, under, all the way around, and we're gonna do that until we've completed the whole circle. So we go over, under, over, under, over, under. Over, under, over, under. Okay, let's say right here you ran out of floss. And so you needed to change your floss over and you're not done your woven rows. What do you do? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over the next stitch and then we're gonna pretend like we're going under, but instead we're actually gonna go down. And we'll pull it through. Okay, so it looks like we've gone under that one, but what we've actually done is we've gone down and pulled it through. And then what you do is you tie it off in the back. So I like to just scoot under an old stitch. Maybe I like to just scoot under an existing stitch, leave a loop, do a little double here like we did with the French knot, and just pull it tight so that I leave a nice knot there. And then you would just tie that, or once it's tied off, you would just cut this, and then you'd come back up in the same spot that we went down. So you would come up from underneath that, that, and then you would continue the pattern. So over, under, over, under. Okay, and then once you're happy with the look of your woven rows, so you could imagine it in a beautiful color with a nice pink in the middle, and then maybe you go to a red on the outside, and it would look like a rose. So then, just like we did before, you're gonna go down, just like you were going under, and you'll go through. And we will tie it off on the back. And that is a woven rose. Now, we're gonna try to satin stitch flower petals. Okay, satin stitching flowers and flower petals. So for this, you're just going to draw a flower, and you can draw your petals however you like. You can draw your flower however you like. And then all we're gonna do is use the satin stitch that we learned and fill in the petals. So I'm gonna try to draw a 5 petal flower here. Okay. Not perfect, but it will do. So once you have drawn a flower, you're gonna take your needle and floss, and you're gonna come up on one side and down on the other. And I like to still break this into pieces just like we did with the straight line when we had the 2 parallel lines, but you can do it however you'd like. So I'm gonna come up at the point there, and I'll come back down, breaking it in half. Ooh. Provided I don't get stuck on my, there we go. Okay. And then I'm gonna do that on each side. I'm just gonna fill it in. Okay, so there you can see that I have satin stitched a petal. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the other 5 petals. And then a fun thing to do in the middle is you can either do a satin stitch in a different color in the center, or you can fill it with the French knots that we learned. They look really cool. They almost look like seeds. So that's especially great if you're gonna do something like a sunflower. They look great in the center. So I'm gonna keep working on this and I'll show you the final product. Okay, so here is my finished satin stitch flower. So I'm hoping you can see that in the center I have done a bunch of the French knots. I think what I learned is that consistency and petal size is going to determine how good it looks at the end. So keeping consistent. But overall, I'm pretty happy with that. I think it would look very nice if I had it a yellow in the center and some purple petals or something. But that is how you satin stitch a flower. Lastly, we're gonna tackle the Bullion Knot and the Bullion Knot rose. So for the Bullion stitch, you can use it as a single stitch, or you can use it to make a lot of different variations of flowers. So I used it to make this rose here. So let me show you how you do it. So you're gonna pick a spot and come up from the back and pull your thread tight. Then you'll come back down a little bit further than a stitch length away, and you're gonna leave a loop. And you want it to be a fairly decent sized loop. Okay. And then you'll come up, so where you first came up the very first time, you're gonna come up pretty close to that or right in that same hole. And so you'll bring your needle up, but you won't pull it all the way through. You're gonna leave it loose here. Okay? And then you're gonna take the thread that's coming out of the hole closest to the base of the needle, and you're gonna wrap it around the needle however many times you want. So the more times you wrap it along, the longer the stitch will be. So if I wrap it 5 times, it'll be shorter. If I wrap it 16 times, it'll be longer. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And so what you want to be thinking about while you're doing this is making sure you're not wrapping it too tightly, because then it'll make it hard to pull through, and that you're kind of just pushing the thread down as you go to make sure it stays on the needle. So make sure you're pushing that floss down. Once you've wrapped it all around, you're gonna keep holding the floss down with your one hand and pulling the needle up with the other. And so I'm holding the floss and I'm pulling this extra floss through what I had wrapped around. Okay. So then I'm just gonna keep pulling until it's tight. And so you can see I have a nice little coil of floss that goes all the way around. And so to finish it off, I'm just gonna go back down into that hole that I came up or went down before. So I'll pull it down. Okay, so there is the Bullion stitch. Let's try it again. So I come up, I go back down, and you leave a nice big loop. Okay, got my loop, awesome. And I'm gonna come up in the same spot as I did before and leave my loose needle there. I'm gonna grab the thread or the floss that is closest to the base of my needle, so the floss that's coming up in the same spot. I'll wrap it around however many times I like, remembering to keep it fairly loose, but keeping it uniform on the needle by pushing it down. Great, once I'm happy with how many I've wrapped around, I'll start to gently pull my needle through while holding the floss at the base until it is tight. Then to finish it off, I go back down. Let me show you that one more time because I know it's a bit of a complicated stitch. So I come up at the bottom, pull my floss tight, I go down at the top. I leave a nice loop, and then I come back up at the bottom, but I don't go all the way through, I leave a loose needle. Then I'm going to take the floss that's coming up at the bottom, closest to the base of my needle, and wrap it around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We'll do 12, 11, 12. I remember to keep that fairly loose, but also push it down to the base. Then I'm gonna pull my needle up, holding that floss down at the base, and then I'll flop it forward and finish it off by coming back down. So there you have the bullion stitch. And so it can be used, if you use it in a circle like I have here and just keep going over and over and over again, you end up with a bullion rose. You can also use it in a star shape, just like the star shape that we draw on when we're doing the woven wheel. So you can draw it that way as well. But ultimately, it's a nice way to get a really thick looking stitch that has a lot of volume and pops off of your fabric. So maybe I'll pop in a couple pictures of what this stitch can look like for you to see, but that is the bullion stitch. If you're not done with flowers and you want to learn more, take a look in the description of this video where I've added additional resources and links that'll take you to awesome YouTube tutorials. Next week, I'm going to be showing you how to embroider words, and I can't wait. So go ahead and tune in. The video will be released on Monday, November 30th at 4 p.m. Thank you for joining me for week 4 of Midland Public Library's Easy Embroidery, the program where we make this beautiful art form so simple. I'll see you next time, Midland. Bye for now.